So, Zartok clicked his mandibles together in what passed for amusement among his species. Have you ever killed anything, human? The question hung in the air of the cramped station bar like a bad smell, the kind that makes you wonder if someone smuggled a decomposing Regellian swamp rat through customs. The 7 alien diplomats seated around the table shifted uncomfortably, their various appendages fidgeting with drinks, creating a symphony of awkward tapping and slurping. Except for Lieutenant Kira Hunter. She just smiled. It wasn't a normal smile. Not the polite, practiced one she'd been wearing for the past 3 hours of this cultural exchange that felt more like an anthropological dissection. No, this was something else entirely. Something ancient. The room went quiet like a battlefield after the first volley. Curious question to ask at a diplomatic function, she finally said, voice carrying the casual tone of someone discussing the weather rather than homicide. But yes, I have. I watched from my position by the bar, wincing internally. As the human ambassador to the Galactic Concordat, I was supposed to prevent exactly this type of conversation. Humans had only joined the interstellar community 8 years ago, and we were still walking on eggshells, or whatever the appropriate idiom would be for the 17 different species we now shared political space with. Most species in the Concordat were herbivores or omnivores who'd evolved past their predatory instincts thousands of years before developing space travel. Humans were different. The Concordat found us fascinating, terrifying, and utterly bewildering. Zartok's question wasn't accidental. The Arthan diplomat had been poking at Hunter all evening, looking for a reaction. He'd found one. Fascinating, Zartok continued, his 6 eyes blinking in sequence. And what exactly have you terminated, Lieutenant Hunter? I should intervene. I really should. But something in Hunter's posture told me she had this under control, and frankly, I was curious too. In my 5 years as ambassador, I'd read her file but never actually spoken with her beyond basic pleasantries. The UNSC had assigned her as military escort for this diplomatic mission, and her combat record was impressive, to say the least. Well, Hunter took a slow sip of her drink. If we're counting everything, then quite a bit. Started with insects as a kid, like most humans. Mosquitoes mostly. They're tiny flying parasites that drink blood. Then fish, when my grandfather taught me to catch them. The Folari representative, a gelatinous being named Ebb, rippled in disgust. Their species communicated through color and texture changes, and right now they were displaying an alarming shade of green with spiky protrusions. Then came my military service, Hunter continued, utterly unconcerned by the growing discomfort around her. That's when the killing became more professional. Professional? Squeaked Diplomat Trilling, a feathered aviar whose species had evolved from something like our birds. You mean your species pays you to kill? I cleared my throat, finally finding my opening. I believe the lieutenant is referring to her service in defense of— No, Ambassador Walsh. Let me answer this one. Hunter interrupted with alarming cheerfulness. Yes, Diplomat Trilling. Some humans are employed specifically for their ability to end the lives of others. We call them soldiers. 7 sets of alien eyes, well, eye equivalents widened in various expressions of horror. But, Hunter added, leaning forward, we only kill those who are trying to kill us or others under our protection. Usually. Usually? Sartok clicked his mandibles rapidly, a sign of extreme interest among the Arthan. Well, sometimes we kill in self-defense, sometimes as punishment for severe crimes, though that's becoming increasingly rare. And sometimes— She smiled again, that same battlefield smile. Sometimes we kill to protect others who cannot protect themselves. The Mithrai delegate, an elder named Loon, whose species resembled upright wolves with 4 arms, spoke up for the first time that evening. Like predators protecting their pack, honorable. Finally someone getting it. I relaxed slightly. The Mithrai were the only other species in the Concordat with a recent evolutionary history of predation. They understood humans better than most. Exactly, Hunter nodded toward Loon. Though we've mostly moved beyond that instinct in modern society. Mostly, Zartok repeated, mandibles clicking rapidly. But not entirely? I swear Hunter's eyes actually gleamed. Not entirely. The discomfort in the room thickened like congealing blood. I needed to redirect this conversation before the lieutenant single-handedly set back human-alien relations by a decade. Speaking of modern society, I interjected with forced brightness. I believe we were discussing cultural exchange. The lieutenant is but one example of humanity's diverse— I want to understand. Zartok cut me off, focusing all 6 eyes on Hunter. What does it feel like to end another sentient being? Every diplomat at the table flinched. Even Loon's ears flattened against his skull. This was beyond inappropriate. It was potentially a diplomatic incident. I opened my mouth to shut it down when Hunter's response silenced me. "Terrible," she said softly, all traces of her smile gone. "It feels terrible." The room stilled. "Then why?" Zartok began. "Because sometimes the alternative feels worse," Hunter said, meeting his gaze steadily. "Sometimes you're faced with a choice between terrible options, and you have to choose the one you can live with. That's what being human is about, really. Making impossible choices and then carrying the weight of them afterward." I found myself nodding unconsciously. In all my prepared speeches about humanity, I'd never captured our essence so succinctly. "Remarkable," whispered Loon, his snout twitching with interest. "Disturbing," countered Ebb, still rippling green. "Both, perhaps," offered Diplomat, trilling, feathers smoothing slightly. "Like much of what we've learned about humans." Hunter raised her glass. "I'll drink to that." And just like that, the tension broke. Conversation resumed, flowing into safer topics. I exhaled slowly, crisis averted. But I kept my eye on the lieutenant for the remainder of the evening. There was more to Kira Hunter than her file suggested. "That was quite a performance," I told Hunter later as we made our way back to the human quarters. The station's artificial night cycle had begun, dimming the lights in the corridors to a soft blue glow. "Not a performance, Ambassador," she replied, her boots making precise, measured sounds against the metal flooring. "Just honesty." "Honesty is rarely the best policy in diplomacy," I said dryly. She shrugged. "That's why I'm a soldier and you're a diplomat. And yet you handled Zartok better than I could have. He's been trying to get a rise out of humans since first contact. Arthan psychology isn't complicated. They're hierarchical. He was testing where we fit." I raised an eyebrow. "And where do we fit, according to your assessment?" Hunter stopped walking and turned to face me. In the dim blue lighting, her features seemed sharper, more defined. "That depends on whether they push us or not." "That sounds dangerously close to a threat, Lieutenant." "Not a threat, a reality. The Concordat needs to understand that humans come in peace, but we don't come in weakness." I sighed. 5 years of careful diplomatic messaging, undermined in a single sentence. "That's not the image we're trying to project." "With all due respect, Ambassador, it should be." Hunter's voice remained level, but there was an intensity behind it. "These species need to understand us if we're going to coexist. And part of understanding humans is knowing what we're capable of, both the good and the bad." "And what exactly are we capable of, in your view?" I couldn't help asking. That smile again, the battlefield one. "Anything necessary." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's temperature controls. "Get some rest, Lieutenant. Tomorrow's meeting with the Security Council will require a more diplomatic approach." "Of course, Ambassador." She nodded formally and continued down the corridor toward her quarters. I watched her go, wondering if bringing a decorated combat veteran to a diplomatic mission had been a mistake or a stroke of genius. Only time would tell. I couldn't sleep. Hunter's words kept replaying in my mind, along with the reactions of the alien delegates. After 3 hours of tossing and turning, I gave up and decided to visit the station's observation deck. Stargazing always helped clear my head. The deck was supposed to be empty at this hour, so I was surprised to find Diplomat Loon already there, his lupine form silhouetted against the vast star field. "Ambassador Walsh," he acknowledged without turning. "The Mithrai had exceptional senses. Trouble sleeping?" "Something like that," I admitted, moving to stand beside him. "And you?" "My species requires less rest than yours." His forearms were clasped behind his back, his posture perfect despite his advanced age. We evolved as nocturnal hunters after all. The mention of hunting brought our dinner conversation back to mind. "I want to apologize for Lieutenant Hunter's candor earlier. She's not accustomed to diplomatic settings." Loon's ear twitched in what I'd come to recognize as amusement. "No apology necessary. In fact, it was refreshing." "Refreshing?" I couldn't mask my surprise. "Most species in the Concordat have sanitized their histories," Loon explained, his gaze still fixed on the stars. "They speak as if they sprang fully formed as peaceful societies, without the messy evolutionary path that actually led them here." "And the Mithrai? We remember what we were," he said simply. "We honor our past while choosing a different future. That is true evolution, not pretending the predator doesn't exist within us, but acknowledging it and choosing when to let it hunt." It was the most philosophical statement I'd ever heard from a Mithrai. Their species was typically direct to the point of bluntness. "You think that's what humans do?" I asked. "I think that's what your Lieutenant Hunter does," Loon corrected. "Most humans I've met seem ashamed of their predatory nature, trying to hide it beneath politeness and protocol." His eyes slid toward me meaningfully. I couldn't argue with that assessment. Our entire diplomatic strategy had been based on downplaying humanity's violent history and warrior culture. The others don't see it that way, I noted. They seemed horrified. They were, Loon agreed. And they should be. Predators are terrifying to those who have never been one. But fear can breed respect if handled properly. Is that what we want, to be feared? Loon finally turned to face me fully, his amber eyes reflecting the starlight. What you want is irrelevant, Ambassador. What matters is truth. And the truth is that humans are dangerous, capable of both great violence and great compassion. Hiding either aspect presents a false image. His words uncomfortably echoed Hunter's. Was I the only one who thought presenting humanity's best face was the right approach? The Security Council meeting tomorrow, I began hesitantly. It's about expanding human presence in Concordat space. If they're afraid of us, they should be cautious about you, Loon interrupted. As you should be cautious about them. Mutual respect begins with mutual truth. I stared out at the endless stars, considering his words. 5 years of careful diplomacy had gotten humanity a token presence in the Concordat, but little real influence. Maybe it was time for a different approach. Thank you for your perspective, Diplomat Loon. He inclined his head slightly. Sleep well, Ambassador. Tomorrow may require both the diplomat and the predator. The Security Council chamber was designed to intimidate. 17 curved desks arranged in a perfect semicircle, each bearing the insignia of a concordat species. At the focal point stood a single podium where petitioners would present their cases. No chair, of course. You weren't meant to get comfortable. I'd stood at that podium a dozen times over the years, always following the same script. Humanity is grateful for the opportunity to join your enlightened community. We have much to learn. We pose no threat. Please allow us a small expansion of our presence, a modest trading post, a minor research facility. Today felt different. Lieutenant Hunter stood at my side, resplendent in her dress uniform. The deep blue fabric was adorned with commendations and rank insignia that meant nothing to the aliens but everything to us. Each medal, each ribbon told a story of courage, sacrifice, and yes, sometimes violence. Ready, Ambassador? She asked quietly as the council members filed in. Not remotely, I admitted. But necessity makes ready of us all. She actually smiled, a real smile, not the battlefield one. That's almost profound, sir. I have my moments. The chamber quieted as Elder Voss, the ancient Trill who had led the Security Council for over a century, took his position at the center desk. His translucent skin revealed the slow pulse of multiple hearts, a sign of his species' legendary calm. The Security Council recognizes Ambassador Daniel Walsh and Lieutenant Kira Hunter of Earth, Elder Voss intoned, his melodic voice carrying without apparent effort. You may present your petition. I stepped forward to the podium, Hunter half a step behind me. My prepared speech sat in my pocket, the same carefully inoffensive platitudes I'd been delivering for 5 years. I left it there. Honorable Council, I began. I come before you not just as humanity's representative, but as a predator among predators. A ripple of murmurs swept through the chamber. In my peripheral vision, I caught Hunter's slight nod of approval. For 5 years, I have stood at this podium and told you what I thought you wanted to hear. That humans are harmless, that we've outgrown our violent past, that we seek only to learn from your enlightened example. Elder Voss's skin pulsed faster, the only indication of his surprise. Parts of that are true, I continued. We do seek to learn. We do aspire to peace. But I have done you and my species a disservice by presenting only half of who we are. I scanned the faces of the council members, noting Zartak's rapidly clicking mandibles and Loon's attentive posture. Humans evolved as predators, as Lieutenant Hunter inadvertently demonstrated yesterday. We killed to survive, then to protect, then eventually to enforce the principles we believe in. Violence is part of our heritage, but so is the choice to set violence aside when possible. The chamber was utterly silent now. We are not asking to expand our presence in Concordat space because we're harmless. We're asking because we're valuable allies precisely because of what we are. Because sometimes, maintaining peace requires the credible threat of force. Zartak rose from his seat, his exoskeleton creaking slightly. Are you threatening the Concordat, Ambassador Walsh? No, Diplomat Zartak, I replied calmly. I'm offering you honesty. And through honesty, a true alliance. Humanity stands ready to defend Concordat interests precisely because we understand conflict in ways many of your species have forgotten. Bold words, Elder Voss commented, his multiple hearts now pulsing in an irregular pattern. But what evidence do we have of humanity's value as allies? Thus far, your species has been granted limited access precisely because your history concerns us. This was the moment I'd been dreading and preparing for. I nodded to Hunter, who stepped forward. With the Council's permission, she said, her voice carrying the natural authority of command, I would like to present classified information regarding an incident in the Proxima sector 3 months ago. Elder Voss's eyes widened slightly. Proceed, Lieutenant. Hunter activated a holographic display from her wrist unit. 3-dimensional star charts materialized in the center of the chamber, zooming in on a remote area of concordate space. 3 months ago, a concordate research vessel went missing in this sector, Hunter began. The official report states it was lost due to a navigational error resulting in shield failure. Diplomat Trilling's feathers ruffled. That is the official record, yes. The official record is false, Hunter stated flatly. The vessel was attacked by a previously unknown hostile species originating from beyond concordate space. We designated them Scourge, based on limited observational data. The hologram shifted to show grainy footage of an encounter between a sleek concordate science vessel and something else. Something that seemed to bend space around it, with appendages that moved wrongly, too fast and at impossible angles. This footage was recovered by a human deep space monitoring post that the Concordate is unaware of. Hunter continued as the Council watched in horror as the science vessel was methodically dismantled by the alien entity. We established these posts along the borders of Concordate space shortly after joining as a precautionary measure. Without authorization, Elder Voss noted, though his tone held more curiosity than accusation. Yes, I confirmed. A predator's instinct to secure its territory. In this case, that instinct saved lives. Hunter changed the display again, now showing a human military vessel, small, angular, and bristling with weapons systems that our diplomatic presentations had carefully omitted. The United Nations Space Command interceptor responded to the attack, engaging the hostile entity and driving it back beyond the sector boundary. The encounter was classified by both human military command and apparently by the Concordate Security Council. Sartak's mandibles were clicking so rapidly they produced an almost continuous sound. How did a human military vessel reach the scene so quickly when Concordate security forces could not? Hunter's expression remained neutral. Because we were already there, maintaining a patrol we didn't tell you about. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien voices, some outraged, others alarmed. Elder Voss raised 4 of his 6 hands, gradually restoring order. This is a serious breach of Concordate sovereignty, he said when the noise had subsided, his tone measured but severe. Yes, I agreed. One undertaken because humanity's natural instincts told us to secure our borders and to protect our allies, even when those allies didn't know they needed protection. The interceptor lost 3 crew members in the engagement, Hunter added quietly. Human lives given to protect Concordate citizens who never knew they were in danger. A heavy silence fell over the chamber. Why reveal this now? Loon asked, his voice cutting through the tension. You could have continued your unsanctioned patrols indefinitely. I took a deep breath. Because the Scourge are returning. Our monitoring stations have detected multiple spatial anomalies consistent with their previous approach. Larger this time. Organized. The holographic display shifted again, showing dozens of disturbances along the outer boundaries of Concordate space, a pattern of deliberate expansion. Humanity stands ready to help defend against this threat, I continued. But we cannot do so effectively with the current limitations on our presence in Concordate space. We need permission to establish official defense outposts, to move our ships freely through Concordate territories, and to coordinate with whatever military assets the Concordate possesses. If such a threat exists, Zartak clicked. Why have Concordate sensors not detected it? With respect, diplomat, Hunter interjected. Your sensor technology is designed for scientific exploration and navigation. Ours is designed to detect threats. Different evolutionary priorities lead to different technological development. Elder Voss studied the holographic display intently, his ancient eyes tracking the pattern of anomalies. If what you say is true, Ambassador Walsh, the Concordate faces an unprecedented threat. And an unprecedented opportunity, I countered. An opportunity to accept humanity as we truly are, not just scholars and traders, but warriors and protectors as well. To form an alliance based on the complete truth of who we are, rather than the sanitized version I've been presenting for 5 years. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. I had essentially admitted to years of diplomatic half-truths and unauthorized military operations in Concordate space. In human terms, I'd just confessed to being a spy and provocateur. My career was almost certainly over. But maybe, just maybe, humanity's future in the stars was beginning. Elder Voss finally spoke. The council will recess for 1 hour to discuss these revelations. Ambassador Walsh, Lieutenant Hunter, please remain available. As the council members filed out, their expressions ranging from outrage to fear to calculation, Hunter leaned close to me. "Well, that went better than expected," she murmured. I gave her a sidelong glance. "I just admitted to 5 years of covert operations and diplomatic deception. We'll be lucky if they don't declare us enemies of the Concordat." "No," Hunter said with surprising certainty. "They need us now. They just don't all know it yet." The hours stretched into 3 as the council deliberated. Hunter and I waited in a small antechamber, neither of us speaking much. What was there to say? We'd laid our cards on the table. All of them, even the ones we'd been hiding up our sleeves for years. When the summons finally came, we were escorted back into the chamber by silent Folari guards, whose rippling surfaces displayed a swirling mixture of colors I couldn't interpret. The council members had returned to their seats, their postures and expressions inscrutable to human eyes. Only Loon, with his familiar lupine features, gave any indication of the outcome, a slight rise of his ear tips that I desperately hoped was a positive sign. Elder Voss spoke first, his multiple hearts now beating in a steady, synchronized rhythm. "Ambassador Walsh, Lieutenant Hunter, the Security Council has reviewed your presentation and the evidence you've provided regarding this scourge threat." I stood at attention, not daring to interrupt. "We have also reviewed the classified records of the incident in the Proxima sector, which confirm your account. The Concordat owes the crew of the Interceptor a debt of gratitude for their sacrifice." Hunter stiffened beside me, her composure momentarily cracking at this unexpected acknowledgement of her fallen comrades. "However," Elder Voss continued, "the unauthorized establishment of military outposts in Concordat space represents a severe breach of trust." Here it comes, I thought. Expulsion from the Concordat, possibly charges under interstellar law. I'd known the risks when I decided on honesty. A breach that must be addressed through proper protocols and reparations. Elder Voss finished, then paused significantly before adding, "As part of a new security partnership between humanity and the Concordat." I blinked, certain I'd misheard. Partnership? "The threat you've identified appears genuine," Zartok clicked, his mandibles moving more slowly now, deliberately. "And while your methods were unorthodox, your intentions appear to have been defensive, rather than aggressive. Moreover," added Diplomat Trilling, feathers sleek and controlled, "the Concordat lacks the military infrastructure to address such a threat effectively. Most member species demilitarized centuries ago as part of joining our collective." "All except the Mithrai," Loon interjected, his ears now fully upright. "And our forces are ceremonial now, more tradition than practical defense." I struggled to process what I was hearing. After 5 years of careful positioning, had our moment of radical honesty actually worked? "The Council proposes," Elder Voss continued, "the establishment of a joint defense initiative. Humanity would provide military expertise and assets, while the Concordat would provide technological support, territorial access, and diplomatic framework. In other words," Hunter said bluntly, "you want us to be your soldiers." A ripple of discomfort passed through several council members, but Elder Voss merely inclined his head. "We prefer the term security partners, but essentially, yes. You have the capabilities we lack, and we have the resources and territory you desire." I glanced at Hunter, who gave me the slightest of nods. This was beyond anything we'd hoped for. The Concordat would acknowledge humanity's predatory heritage not as a liability, but as a valuable trait when properly channeled, Elder Voss continued. In return, humanity would agree to operate within established protocols, with full transparency going forward. "And the existing human outposts?" I asked. "Would be retroactively sanctioned and expanded under joint oversight." Zartok clicked. "No need to dismantle effective security assets in the face of an emerging threat." It was everything we wanted, handed to us on a silver platter because we'd finally stopped pretending to be something we weren't. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Humanity would be honored to accept this partnership," I said formally, hoping my voice didn't betray my astonishment. "Subject to the approval of our government, of course." "Of course," Elder Voss agreed. "We will draft the proposed agreement immediately. The full council will convene in 2 days' time for final approval." As the council members rose to conclude the session, Loon approached us directly, his amber eyes gleaming with what might have been amusement. "It seems the predators will hunt together after all," he said quietly. "So it seems," I agreed, though I'm surprised by how quickly the council came around. Loon's ear twitched. "Fear is a powerful motivator, Ambassador. And as I told you, fear can breed respect when properly handled." "Do they respect us, or just need us?" Hunter asked with characteristic bluntness. "Does it matter?" Loon countered. Results are what count in the end, not sentiments. You'll earn their respect over time as you prove your worth as allies. With a final nod, he departed, leaving Hunter and me alone in the gradually emptying chamber. Well, she said after a moment, that was unexpected. Completely, I agreed. I was prepared for exile, not promotion. What changed your mind? She asked as we began walking toward the exit. After 5 years of the diplomatic approach, why the sudden shift to honesty? I considered the question carefully. Something you said, actually, about making impossible choices and carrying the weight afterward. I realized I'd been carrying the weight of our half-truths for years, always wondering if I was helping humanity or hindering us by hiding who we really are. And now? Now we find out if the Concordat can handle the real humanity, predatory instincts and all. I glanced at her. Though perhaps we should avoid any more dinner conversations about killing. Hunter's laugh echoed through the corridor, startling a group of passing Avior diplomats. No promises, Ambassador, no promises at all. 2 days later, I stood on the observation deck, watching as the first officially sanctioned human military vessel docked with the station. The United Nations Space Command Defender was larger than the Interceptor, its design making no attempt to disguise its purpose. Weapons arrays and sensor suites were prominently displayed, a visual statement that humanity was done hiding its nature. Impressive ship, said a familiar voice behind me. Sartak moved to stand beside me, his exoskeleton gleaming under the deck's lighting. One of our best, I acknowledged. Captain Reyes and her crew are among our finest. She is killed too, I assume. There was no judgment in the question, just curiosity. Yes. She commanded the relief force that evacuated the Interceptor crew after their engagement with the Scourge. 2 more human lives were lost during that operation. Sartak's mandibles clicked softly. The Arthen have not experienced the death of one of our own in conflict for over 3,000 years. We've forgotten what it means to sacrifice for security. A luxury of peace, I observed. Perhaps too much luxury, he replied, surprising me. Species grow complacent without challenges. The Concordat has been stable for so long that we've forgotten how to adapt. I turned to face him fully. Is that why you've been testing humans since first contact? Looking for signs of adaptability? Zartak's compound eyes reflected the starlight in fractured patterns. The Arthen remember what it means to be prey, Ambassador. Before we evolved intelligence, before we built our first primitive tools, we were hunted by apex predators on our homeworld. That memory lives in our genetic code, and when you meet a new predator species, we test their restraint, he finished. Humanity passed that test, both in Lieutenant Hunter's measured response to my provocation, and in your military's decision to defend Concordat citizens without seeking recognition or advantage. Until now, I pointed out. Until necessity demanded it, Zartak corrected. There is a difference. We watched in silence as the docking procedure completed, the massive clamps securing the Defender to the station with a vibration we could feel even at this distance. The Security Council has authorized a joint briefing on the Scourge threat, Zartak said after a moment. All species representatives, your military personnel, and our scientific advisors. Elder Voss believes transparency is essential to this new partnership. I agree, I said, thinking of how much time I'd wasted on carefully constructed half-truths. No more secrets between allies. No more relevant secrets. Zartak clicked, a hint of dry humor in his tone. I'm sure both our species will maintain some private matters. I smiled despite myself. Fair enough. A chime sounded, indicating the Defender's crew had completed docking protocols and were preparing to board the station. I should greet Captain Reyes, I said, turning to go. Ambassador Walsh, Zartak called after me, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. One more question, if I may. I paused. Of course. Lieutenant Hunter, when I asked if she had killed, her smile. What did it mean? I considered how to explain something so fundamentally human to a being whose species had evolved along such a different path. It wasn't pleasure, if that's what you're wondering, I said finally. More like recognition, acknowledgement of a truth we usually keep hidden, even from ourselves. The predator within, Zartak clicked softly. Yes, humans smile for many reasons, joy, humor, politeness. But that particular smile, that's the smile of a species remembering what it is capable of for better or worse. Zartak's mandibles moved in what I'd come to recognize as his version of thoughtful consideration. Fascinating and somewhat terrifying. That's humanity in a nutshell, I agreed. Fascinating and terrifying, even to ourselves sometimes. With a final nod to the Arthen diplomat, I headed toward the docking bay to welcome our officially sanctioned military presence to Concordat space, wondering what other truths about humanity would emerge now that we'd stopped pretending to be what we were not. The joint briefing on the Scourge threat was held in the station's largest conference chamber, hastily adapted to accommodate both the entire diplomatic corps and the newly arrived military personnel. Captain Elena Reyes stood at the central podium, her weathered face betraying none of the fatigue she must feel after an emergency faster-than-light journey from Earth. The entity we've designated Scourge appears to be a collective organism, she explained, manipulating the holographic display to show enhanced images from the Interceptor's encounter. Multiple bodies functioning as a single consciousness, capable of manipulating space-time in ways our physicists are still struggling to understand. I watched the faces of the Concordate representatives as they absorbed this information. Fear, certainly, but also fascination. Most of these species were scientists at heart, even when confronted with a predator. Based on our analysis of their movement patterns and the spatial distortions preceding their appearances, we believe they're preparing for a large-scale incursion into this sector within the next 60 to 90 days, Reyes continued, her voice steady and matter-of-fact, as if discussing weather patterns rather than an existential threat. "What do they want?" asked Diplomat Trilling, his feathers quivering slightly. Reyes's expression hardened. "Based on the Proxima incident, they appear to systematically dismantle any vessels or structures they encounter, incorporating the materials into their own mass. We have no evidence of communication attempts or any interest in the organic lifeforms they encounter. They consume technology." Zartok clicked, his exoskeleton shifting in what I now recognized as agitation. "And the Concordat is a civilization built on advanced technology." "An all-you-can-eat buffet," muttered Lieutenant Hunter from her position beside me. I shot her a warning glance, but several nearby aliens had already heard. "Precisely," Captain Reyes confirmed, apparently untroubled by Hunter's bluntness. "Which is why the Joint Defense Initiative must move quickly. The Defender has brought preliminary defense plans and equipment, but we'll need full cooperation from all Concordat species to implement them effectively." Elder Voss rose from his seat, his translucent skin pulsing with rapid heartbeats. "Captain Reyes, the Concordat has existed for over 3,000 years without a centralized military force. Many of our member species have no combat training whatsoever. What exactly do you expect from us?" Reyes's response was immediate and unflinching. "Knowledge, resources, trust. We don't need you to fight. We need you to help us understand what we're fighting for and provide the tools to do it effectively." "And if we lose?" asked a Folari representative, their gelatinous form rippling with patches of dark purple. "Fear, I'd learned." Reyes looked directly at the Folari, her gaze steady. "Then we lose together as allies, but humans don't plan to lose." Bold words. Zartok clicked his mandibles rapidly. "But what makes humans qualified to lead this defense? Your species has barely mastered interstellar travel." I tensed, expecting Captain Reyes to bristle at the challenge. Instead, she smiled. Not Hunter's battlefield smile, but something more measured, more controlled. "We're qualified precisely because we're new to the stars," she said calmly. "Humanity spent its entire history fighting, first against nature, then against each other. While the Concordat was building an interstellar society based on cooperation and scientific advancement, we were developing weapons, tactics, and strategies to survive conflict." She paused, letting her words sink in. "You evolved beyond violence because you could afford to. We evolved through violence because we had to. That difference doesn't make either approach wrong. It makes us complementary. You understand peace. We understand war." The chamber fell silent as her words resonated with everyone present. Even Lieutenant Hunter looked impressed. Elder Voss finally broke the silence. "What do you need from us, Captain Reyes?" "Full access to Concordat scientific databases, particularly anything regarding space-time manipulation and gravitational physics. Joint operation of sensor arrays throughout the sector. And volunteers from each species to serve as cultural and scientific advisors aboard human vessels." Sartok's mandibles clicked in surprise. "You want us on your warships?" "This isn't just humanity's fight," Reyes replied. "The more we understand about each other, the better we can protect what matters to all of us." I watched understanding dawn across alien faces throughout the chamber. This wasn't a human takeover of Concordat security. It was a genuine partnership, with each side contributing what the other lacked. "The Mithrai will volunteer," Loon announced, rising to his full impressive height. "Our warrior traditions may be ceremonial now, but we remember what it means to stand with packmates in battle." "The Arthen will contribute as well," Zartok added after a moment's consideration. "Our sensory capabilities may prove useful in detecting these entities." One by one, representatives from each Concordat species offered their support. some enthusiastically, others with clear reservation, but all recognizing the necessity of cooperation. As the meeting concluded and the chamber began to empty, Captain Reyes approached Hunter and me, her expression softening slightly. "Ambassador Walsh," she said with a formal nod. "Lieutenant Hunter, quite a situation you've handed me." "Sorry about that, Captain," I replied. "It wasn't exactly planned." "On the contrary," she said with a hint of amusement. "I understand you deliberately revealed classified information about our covert operations to an alien government. That sounds very planned to me." Hunter stiffened beside me. "The ambassador made a tactical decision based on changing circumstances." "At ease, Lieutenant," Reyes said, her tone gentler. "I'm not here to reprimand anyone." Earth Command is cautiously optimistic about this new arrangement. Apparently, honesty has accomplished what years of careful diplomacy couldn't. I exhaled slowly, relief washing over me. "So I'm not being court-martialed for treason?" "Not today," Reyes chuckled. "Though I'd avoid any surprise visits to Earth for a while. The Security Council is still processing your creative interpretation of diplomatic protocols." "Understood," I said, unable to suppress a smile. "What's our next move?" "I'd like you both on the Defender," Reyes said, her expression turning serious again. "Ambassador Walsh for continued diplomatic liaison, and Lieutenant Hunter because anyone crazy enough to smile when asked if they've killed is someone I want on my team when facing an unknown enemy." Hunter actually looked embarrassed. "Word travels fast." "Interspecies gossip travels faster than light," Reyes confirmed with a wry smile. "We depart in 6 hours to establish the first joint defense outpost. I expect you both ready to transfer by then." As she walked away, Hunter turned to me with a raised eyebrow. "Well, Ambassador, looks like your diplomatic career is taking an unexpected turn. From talking about humanity's peaceful intentions to helping coordinate our first interstellar military alliance," I mused. "Definitely not what I expected when I took this posting." "No regrets?" I thought about the 5 years I'd spent carefully crafting humanity's image as harmless newcomers to the galactic community, always hiding our full nature, always apologizing for our evolutionary history. "No," I said finally. "No regrets. It's time the Concordat met the real humanity. Predatory instincts, protective instincts, and everything in between." Hunter nodded, her expression unusually solemn. "For what it's worth, I think you made the right call. Honesty was always going to come out eventually, better on our terms than theirs. Let's just hope it doesn't get us all killed," I muttered. "That's my job, Ambassador," she replied with that now familiar battlefield smile. "Making sure the honest truth-tellers live to tell more truths tomorrow." 3 weeks later, I stood on the bridge of the Defender, watching through the viewscreen as construction drones swarmed around the framework of Outpost Sentinel, the first joint human Concordat military installation. The massive structure hung in space at the edge of the sector, its design a fascinating hybrid of human defensive architecture and Concordat technological aesthetics. "Impressive progress," Captain Reyes commented as she joined me by the viewscreen. "The Concordat engineers have adapted to our specifications faster than expected." "They're motivated," I replied. "Nothing like an existential threat to accelerate the learning curve." In the 3 weeks since our departure from the diplomatic station, the Joint Defense Initiative had moved with remarkable speed. 7 more human vessels had joined the Defender, bringing specialized equipment and personnel. Concordat scientists had opened their databases fully, sharing millennia of research that human experts were now frantically analyzing for defensive applications. Most surprisingly, representatives from each Concordat species had volunteered to serve aboard human ships, some as scientific advisors, others as cultural liaisons, and a few, particularly among the Mithrai, expressing interest in actual combat training. "Ambassador Walsh," called Lieutenant Hunter from her station at Tactical. "We're receiving a priority transmission from the sensor array in Sector 7. Reyes straightened immediately. "On screen, Lieutenant." The viewscreen shifted to show a real-time feed from one of the advanced sensor platforms we'd deployed throughout the region. At first, I saw nothing unusual, just the empty blackness of space dotted with distant stars. Then I noticed the distortion, a subtle warping of starlight in a pattern we'd all come to recognize. "Scourge signature," Hunter confirmed, her voice tight. "Bigger than any we've recorded previously." Reyes's expression hardened. "Time to intercept with Outpost Sentinel?" "At current velocity, 63 hours. Hunter replied after consulting her instruments. "That's too soon," I said, anxiety crawling up my spine. "The outpost's defensive systems aren't fully operational yet." "No," Reyes agreed grimly. "They're not." She tapped her command interface, opening a ship-wide channel.
All hands battle stations.
This is not a drill. Prepare for possible engagement with Scourge entities. As the bridge erupted into controlled activity, Reyes turned to me. Ambassador, I need you to coordinate with our Concordat advisors. If this thing changes course or behavior, I want to know immediately if they have any insights. Understood, Captain. I moved toward the science section where Loon, Zartak, and several other alien representatives had gathered, their expressions showing various species-specific signs of concern. We've detected a Scourge approach, I informed them, keeping my voice level. Larger than previous encounters and on a direct course for Outpost Sentinel. Zartak's mandibles clicked rapidly. The construction activity may have attracted their attention. If they consume technology as you believe, then an unfinished outpost full of construction equipment would be irresistible. Loon finished, his ears flat against his skull. A vulnerable target. Can we evacuate the construction teams in time? Asked a Trill scientist whose name I couldn't recall. We'll try, I assured them, though privately I shared Reyes's grim assessment. The Scourge was moving faster than we'd anticipated, and Outpost Sentinel housed over 300 Concordat engineers and technicians. Lieutenant Hunter, Reyes called out. Prepare a battle plan assuming we need to engage before the entity reaches the outpost. I want options. Hunter's hands flew over her tactical display. Yes, Captain. Working on it now. I turned back to our alien advisors. I need everything you know about gravitational displacement and space-time manipulation. According to our analysis, that's how these things move. They don't just travel through space, they bend it. The Folari have extensive research on gravitational fields, offered their representative, their gelatinous form now a focused blue-green. We've been studying similar phenomena for centuries. The Arthen understand distortion patterns, Zartak added. Our sensory organs evolved to detect minute changes in spatial geometry. Good, I nodded. Work with our science team. If we can predict its movements more accurately, maybe we can intercept it before it reaches the outpost. As they moved to join the human scientists, Loon remained beside me, his amber eyes fixed on the view screen where the spatial distortion was now clearly visible even to the naked eye. You're worried, he observed quietly. 300 Concordat citizens are in the path of that thing, I replied. And we barely understand what we're facing. Yes, I'm worried. Loon's ear twitched slightly. Not just about them, about what comes after. I glanced at him sharply. What do you mean? If your ships engage this entity to protect Concordat lives, he said carefully, it will change everything. No longer will humans be seen as diplomatic partners or even security consultants. You will be warriors fighting our war. The weight of his words settled over me. He was right, of course. This wasn't just about stopping an immediate threat. It was about irrevocably changing humanity's place in the Concordat. Once we shed blood, or whatever the Scourge equivalent might be, in defense of alien lives, there would be no going back to careful diplomatic positioning. Perhaps that's what we've always been, I said finally. Warriors looking for the right war. Loon's expression was unreadable, even to someone who'd spent years studying alien facial structures. Be careful what you wish for, Ambassador. The Mithrai were once the warriors of our sector, before the Concordat. That role defined us for millennia, and when peace came we struggled to redefine ourselves. Before I could respond, Captain Reyes approached, her expression grim but determined. Ambassador, I need you and our advisors in the strategy room immediately. Lieutenant Hunter has developed a plan, but it will require Concordat approval. What kind of plan? I asked, immediately concerned by her tone. The kind that reveals capabilities we hadn't planned to share yet, she said quietly. But if it works, it could save everyone on that outpost. I nodded, understanding the implications. More secrets revealed, more of humanity's true nature exposed. I'll bring them right away. As I gathered the alien representatives and led them toward the strategy room, I couldn't help but think of Hunter's smile in that station bar, so many weeks ago now. The smile that acknowledged what humans were capable of, for better or worse. Today, it seemed, the Concordat would learn exactly what that smile meant. The strategy room was dominated by a three-dimensional tactical display showing Outpost Sentinel, the approaching Scourge entity, and the Defender's position relative to both. Lieutenant Hunter stood beside it, her uniform immaculate despite the crisis, her expression focused. Thank you for coming, she began as our alien advisors filed in. What I'm about to share is classified technology that Earth Command has authorized me to reveal given the current circumstances. She manipulated the display, zooming in on the Defender. A new element appeared, a sleek cylindrical device mounted beneath the ship's main hull. This is a gravitational compressor, Hunter explained. Experimental technology developed for mining operations in unstable asteroid fields. It creates a localized gravitational singularity that collapses in on itself after a preset duration. Sartak's mandibles clicked in what I'd come to recognize as alarm. You're describing a controlled black hole. A very small, very temporary one, Hunter corrected. But yes, essentially. The Concordate representatives exchanged glances of shock and disbelief. Creating artificial singularities was far beyond what they believed human technology capable of. The plan, Hunter continued, is to position the defender between the Scourge and the outpost, deploy the compressor at maximum range, and create a gravitational well that will disrupt the Scourge's approach, hopefully long enough for evacuation ships to reach the outpost. And if the singularity affects your ship as well? Loon asked, his ears flat against his skull. We have countermeasures, Hunter replied with a confidence I wasn't entirely sure was justified. Gravitational anchors that should prevent us from being pulled in. Should? The Folari representative rippled with skeptical red patterns. Captain Reyes stepped forward. This technology has been tested in controlled conditions, but never against an entity like the Scourge. There is risk involved, to the Defender and its crew. Yet you're willing to take that risk, Zartak observed, his compound eyes fixed on Reyes. To protect Concordate citizens you've never met. That's what allies do, she replied simply. A heavy silence fell over the room as the implication sank in. Humans were proposing to risk their lives and reveal classified technology to save aliens they barely knew. It was a level of commitment none of them had expected from the newcomers to galactic society. We need your approval, I explained, addressing the group. Not just as representatives of your species, but as individuals with specialized knowledge. If you see flaws in this plan or can suggest improvements, now is the time. To my surprise, it was the typically cautious Trill scientist who spoke first. The plan is sound but incomplete. The Scourge manipulates space-time. A gravitational disruption alone may not be sufficient. What do you suggest? Hunter asked, showing none of the dismissiveness humans often displayed toward alien input. Combine your gravitational compressor with Trill phase-shifting technology, the scientist proposed. Our research vessels use it to study cosmic phenomena without disruption. If we modify your device to incorporate a phase shift at the moment of gravitational collapse, we could potentially push the Scourge temporarily out of phase with normal space, Hunter finished, eyes widening with understanding, buying even more time for evacuation. It would require direct interface between our systems, the Trill noted, something never before attempted. Can it be done in time? Reyes asked bluntly. The Trill considered for a moment, then nodded. With your engineering team's assistance and direct access to your gravitational compressor, yes. You'll have both, Reyes promised, then turned to the others. Any other suggestions or concerns? For the next hour, the strategy room buzzed with a true interspecies collaboration unlike anything I'd witnessed in my years as ambassador. The Folari offered insights on gravitational wave patterns. The Arthen suggested sensor modifications to better track the Scourge's response, and the Mithrai, represented by Loon, proposed tactical positioning based on their ancient hunting formations. Humans and aliens, predators and prey, scientists and warriors, all focused on a single goal, saving lives. It was diplomacy transformed into action, theory into practice. When we finally emerged with a refined plan, Captain Reyes turned to me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Ambassador Walsh, she said formally, please inform the Concordate Security Council of our intentions and request emergency authorization for this joint operation. Of course, Captain, I replied, equally formal. Then, unable to help myself, I added, it seems honesty continues to yield unexpected benefits. Her lips quirked in the ghost of a smile. Let's hope it continues to do so when we're facing down that thing. As I moved to the communications array to contact the council, Loon fell into step beside me. You're Lieutenant Hunter, he said quietly. The one who smiled when asked about killing. What about her? I believe I understand that smile now, he said, amber eyes watching as Hunter efficiently coordinated preparations with our alien advisors. It wasn't about death at all, was it? I followed his gaze, watching the woman who had inadvertently set this entire chain of events in motion with a single, unsettling expression at a diplomatic dinner. No, I agreed. It was about protection, about being the one willing to stand between your people and harm, no matter the cost. Loon's ear twitched in what I now recognized as satisfaction. Perhaps humans and Mithrai are not so different after all. We too understand the burden of the Protector. As I sent our emergency request to the Concordate Council, I reflected on how quickly perceptions could change. 3 weeks ago, humans were seen as potentially dangerous newcomers to be carefully monitored. Now we were about to risk our lives and our most advanced technology to protect Concordat citizens. All because we'd finally stopped hiding what we were. Approaching optimal deployment range in 3 minutes, Lieutenant Hunter announced, her voice steady despite the tension permeating the bridge. The Defender had positioned itself directly in the path between the rapidly approaching Scourge entity and Outpost Sentinel. Behind us, evacuation vessels were frantically loading Concordat personnel, but it was already clear they wouldn't complete the operation before the entity arrived. We were the only thing standing between 300 civilians and an incomprehensible threat. "Status of the modified compressor?" Captain Reyes asked, her attention fixed on the main view screen where the spatial distortion was now clearly visible. A writhing, twisting warping of space that seemed to devour light itself. "Integration with Trill Phase technology complete," reported our chief engineer. "But the system is untested. We have no way of knowing exactly what will happen when activated." "Noted," Reyes replied calmly. "Prepare for deployment on my mark." I stood to the side of the bridge, officially present as diplomatic liaison but practically useless in this moment of crisis. Beside me, Loon, Zartak, and the Trill scientist watched in tense silence, representatives of species that had never imagined they would witness humans fighting on their behalf. "Visual contact," Hunter announced as the main screen adjusted to compensate for the spatial distortion. The Scourge materialized from the warped space like a nightmare-given form. The entity was vastly larger than the one encountered by the Interceptor, a writhing mass of what appeared to be metallic tentacles surrounding a central core that pulsed with unnatural energy. As we watched, parts of it seemed to phase in and out of normal space, appearing and disappearing in patterns that hurt the eyes to follow. "By the first nest," Zartak clicked softly, his mandibles barely moving. "Sensor analysis," Reyes demanded, her composure unshaken even by this eldritch horror. "Multiple gravity wells within the entity," reported the science officer. "It's not just bending space around itself. It's somehow integrating gravitational manipulation into its physical structure." "That's how it consumes technology," the Trill scientist murmured. "It creates localized gravitational fields to tear structures apart at the molecular level." Hunter's hands flew over her tactical station. "Adjusting compressor targeting parameters to account for the entity's internal gravity wells. This could actually work in our favor. If we can disrupt its internal fields, we might do more than just delay it." 1 minute to optimal range," announced the helm officer. Reyes turned to face the alien representatives directly. "Last chance to object. Once we activate this device, we're committed." Loon stepped forward, speaking for all of them. "Proceed, Captain. The Concordat stands with humanity in this action." She nodded once, then returned her attention to the approaching horror. "All hands, secure for possible gravitational disturbance. Deploy countermeasures." Throughout the ship, I knew, gravitational anchors were activating, experimental technology designed to shield the Defender from the very weapon it was about to deploy. Technology humans had developed in secret, never expecting to use it in defense of alien lives. 30 seconds to deployment range, Hunter reported. "Entity is accelerating. It's detected us." On the view screen, the Scourge's tentacles began to stretch toward the Defender, elongating impossibly as space itself warped around them. "Evasive maneuvers," Reyes ordered calmly. "Maintain deployment trajectory." The ship shuddered as it twisted away from the reaching tentacles, its engines straining against the gravitational distortions already beginning to affect local space. 15 seconds. Hunter counted down, her voice tight with concentration. "Compressor charged and ready." One of the tentacles clipped our port shield, sending a shudder through the entire vessel. Warning lights flashed across multiple consoles. "Shield integrity at 87%, reported the engineering station. "Direct hit from that thing could cause serious damage." "We won't give it the chance," Reyes said, her eyes never leaving the view screen. "Lieutenant Hunter, deploy on my mark." The tension on the bridge was palpable as Hunter's hand hovered over the deployment control. The Scourge loomed larger on the screen, its tentacles writhing with increasing agitation as it sensed our presence. 3, 2, 1, mark! Hunter slammed her hand down on the control. For a breathless moment, nothing happened. Then a cylindrical object launched from beneath the Defender's hull, streaking toward the approaching entity. "Compressor away," Hunter confirmed. "Detonation in 5 seconds." We watched in tense silence as the device flew directly into the heart of the Scourge's mass. The entity seemed to sense the danger, its tentacles converging to intercept, but too late. "Detonation," Hunter announced. The space between the Defender and the Scourge twisted. There's no other word for it. Light bent, stars smeared, and reality itself seemed to fold inward around a point of absolute darkness. The Scourge entity convulsed as its outer tentacles were pulled violently toward the microscopic black hole suddenly existing in its midst. "Phase shift activating," the Trill scientist called out, monitoring the integrated alien technology from an auxiliary console. A pulse of blue-white energy erupted from the Singularity's event horizon, washing over the writhing Scourge. Where the energy touched, the entity's substance seemed to flicker, becoming translucent, then partially transparent. "It's working!" exclaimed the science officer. "The entity is shifting partially out of phase with normal space." The Defender rocked violently as gravitational waves washed over us, our anchors straining against forces they were never designed to withstand. "Maintain position," Reyes ordered as consoles sparked and crew members grabbed for handholds. "Engineering, status of the Singularity? Collapsing on schedule," came the tense reply. 10 seconds to complete dissolution." On the view screen, the Scourge continued to writhe in apparent agony, its mass partially phased out of normal space, its remaining tentacles flailing wildly. One lashed out directly toward the Defender. "Brace for impact!" Reyes shouted. The tentacles struck our starboard hull with devastating force. The ship lurched violently, throwing crew members from their stations. Emergency klaxons wailed as damage reports flooded in. "Hull breach on Deck 7, engineering reported. Emergency force fields holding. Singularity collapse in 3, 2, 1. Hunter counted down. The point of darkness at the center of the spatial distortion winked out of existence. The gravitational waves buffeting the ship gradually subsided, and the view screen cleared to show the aftermath. The Scourge entity hung in space, visibly diminished. Nearly half its mass had been drawn into the temporary Singularity, or phased out of normal space. The remaining tentacles moved sluggishly, as if struggling to coordinate. "Analysis," Reyes demanded, wiping blood from a cut on her forehead. "Entity mass reduced by approximately 43%, reported the science officer. "It appears disoriented and is no longer on course for the outpost." A ragged cheer went up from the bridge crew. Even our alien advisors showed signs of their species' equivalent of relief. Zartak's mandibles clicking rapidly in what I now recognized as excitement. The Trill's skin pulsing with bright colors, Loon's ears perked high. But Captain Reyes remained focused on the view screen. "Is it retreating?" Hunter studied her tactical readouts. "Negative, Captain. It's reorganizing. The remaining mass is restructuring itself." As we watched, the surviving tentacles of the Scourge began to curl inward, forming a more compact shape around its central core. The chaotic movement became more ordered, more purposeful. "It's adapting," the Trill scientist observed, a note of awe in his voice. "Learning from what just happened." "Or preparing to retaliate," Hunter suggested grimly. Reyes turned to the communications officer. "Status of the evacuation?" "Outpost Sentinel reports 62% of personnel evacuated. Estimated time to completion, 28 minutes. "Too long," Reyes muttered, then raised her voice. "Lieutenant Hunter, options?" Hunter's expression was grim as she studied her tactical display. "The compressor is depleted and our phase shift integration is offline. Conventional weapons would be like throwing rocks at a tsunami. So we're out of tricks," Reyes concluded. "Not necessarily." All eyes turned to Loon, who had stepped forward, his amber eyes fixed on the restructuring Scourge entity. "Mithrai hunting packs face similar situations when prey adapted to our tactics," he explained. "When technology fails, sometimes the most primitive solution becomes viable again." "Meaning?" Reyes asked. "Your ship still has maneuvering capability, does it not?" Loon asked. "And the entity is weakened, disorganized." Understanding dawned on Hunter's face. "You're suggesting we ram it?" "A calculated strike," Loon clarified. "Not suicide. Target the weakened central core with your reinforced bow section, then immediately reverse engines to disengage. Like a predator's bite and retreat." Zartak clicked, mandibles moving in agitation. "Primitive but potentially effective." Reyes considered for a moment, her expression unreadable. "The structural integrity of our bow section was compromised in the last attack. A direct collision could cause catastrophic damage to the Defender, but it would buy time for the evacuation to complete," I pointed out quietly. The bridge fell silent as everyone grasped the choice before us. Risk the ship and all aboard to ensure the safety of the remaining Concordat personnel. Reyes's expression hardened with decision. "Helm, plot an attack vector targeting the entity's central mass. Engineering, divert all available power to forward shields and structural integrity fields." "Captain," the helm officer began hesitantly, "with the damage we've sustained—" "I'm aware of the risks, Lieutenant," Reyes cut him off. "Execute the order." As the crew rushed to comply, Reyes turned to our alien advisors. I suggest you secure yourselves in the nearest emergency stations. This will not be a smooth ride. None of them moved. We stay, Loon said simply. To observe, to bear witness. To what? I asked. To humanity, Zartok clicked softly. To predators becoming protectors. A strange feeling swept over me. Something between pride and profound sadness. In this moment, these representatives of ancient species were seeing humanity at its most essential. Fierce, protective, willing to sacrifice for others. Everything I'd tried to hide during years of careful diplomacy was now on display. Raw and unfiltered. All stations report ready, Captain, Hunter announced. Attack vector plotted. Reyes took her seat in the command chair, her posture perfect despite the chaos around her. Proceed, full impulse power. Brace for impact in 30 seconds. The Defender surged forward, engines straining as we accelerated directly toward the still reorganizing Scourge entity. On the view screen, its tentacles began to unfurl, sensing our approach. 20 seconds to impact, Hunter counted down. The entity extended tentacles toward us, but sluggishly, still recovering from the gravitational assault. 15 seconds. Emergency force fields activated throughout the ship as systems prepared for the impending collision. 10 seconds. I found myself standing straighter, shoulders back, chin up, a posture of defiance in the face of the unknown. Beside me, our alien advisors did the same, each in their species' way. 5 seconds. Reyes's voice cut through the tension. For the Concordat! The Defender slammed into the central mass of the Scourge entity with devastating force. The impact threw everyone forward, safety restraints cutting painfully as the ship's inertial dampeners struggled to compensate. The lights flickered, died, then resumed at emergency levels. Direct hit to entity core, Hunter reported, her voice elevated but controlled. Reverse engines, full power! The ship shuddered violently as the engines strained against the entity's mass. On the view screen, we could see the Scourge convulsing where our bow had penetrated its central structure, tentacles whipping frantically. We're caught, engineering reported. Something's holding us in place. Gravitational tendrils, the Trill scientist observed, peering at a sensor display. It's creating localized gravity wells to trap your hull. Increase power to engines, Reyes ordered. Redirect from life support if necessary. The ship groaned under the strain, metal shrieking in protest as we fought to break free from the Scourge's grasp. Warning lights flashed across every console as systems approached critical failure. Hull integrity failing, engineering reported, voice tight with tension. We can't sustain this much longer. Reyes's expression never changed. Prepare to evacuate the forward sections. We'll separate the bow if necessary. The implications were clear. We would sacrifice part of the ship if that's what it took to escape. Then, without warning, the resistance vanished. The Defender lurched backward as the engines suddenly met no opposition, nearly throwing us all to the deck again. We're free, Hunter exclaimed. Entity has released us! Full reverse, maximum distance, Reyes ordered. Tactical status of the entity? As the Defender pulled away, the view screen showed the Scourge in apparent disarray. The central core where we had struck glowed with an unstable energy, tentacles moving erratically rather than with purpose. It appears severely damaged, Hunter reported, studying her readouts. Energy signature fluctuating wildly. I think we hit something vital, or it's preparing something we haven't seen before, Reyes cautioned. Maintain maximum distance. What's the status of the evacuation? Outpost reports final shuttles launching now, Communications replied. Estimated 8 minutes to complete evacuation. They'll make it, I said softly, relief washing over me. As if in response to my words, the Scourge entity suddenly contracted, its entire mass collapsing inward toward the damaged core. The spatial distortion around it intensified, light bending impossibly as reality itself seemed to fold. Energy spike, Hunter shouted. Massive gravitational distortion forming. Evasive maneuvers, Reyes ordered. Maximum shield power! But before the helm officer could respond, the entity imploded with catastrophic force. A shockwave of twisted space-time erupted outward, engulfing the Defender before we could escape its radius. The ship spun violently as local space distorted around us. Systems failed across the board, artificial gravity fluctuated wildly, and for several terrifying moments, it seemed the Defender itself might tear apart under the strain. Then, as suddenly as it began, the distortion passed. The ship stabilized, emergency systems gradually bringing vital functions back online. Report, Reyes demanded, pulling herself back into her command chair. Significant damage to all systems, engineering responded. But we're in one piece. Whatever that was, our structural integrity fields held, barely. The entity, Reyes asked, turning to Tactical. Hunter studied her partially restored sensors. Gone, Captain. No trace remains. It appears to have destroyed itself when we damaged its core. Or transformed into something we can't detect. Zartok clicked softly. Either way, Reyes said. The immediate threat has passed. Status of Outpost Sentinel evacuation? Complete, Captain. Communications reported with obvious relief. All personnel safely away. They're sending their thanks, rather enthusiastically. For the first time since the crisis began, Reyes allowed herself a small smile. Inform them they're welcome. Set course to rendezvous with the evacuation fleet. Best possible speed with our damaged systems. As the bridge crew carried out her orders, Reyes turned to our alien advisors. Your assistance was invaluable. Without the Trill phase technology and the Mithrite tactical suggestion, this encounter would likely have ended very differently. A true cooperation, Loon acknowledged, his amber eyes gleaming with what might have been pride. The first of many, I hope. The Concordat will not forget what happened here. Zartok clicked, his mandibles moving in a pattern I'd never seen before. Humans risked their lives and revealed their most advanced technology to protect our people. That's what allies do, I said, echoing Captain Reyes's earlier words. No, the Trill scientist corrected gently. That's what humans do. Most species in the Concordat would have prioritized their own safety, their own technological secrets. We're learning from you, Loon added, just as you're learning from us. As the Defender limped toward the rendezvous point, I found myself reflecting on the strange journey that had brought us here. From a diplomatic dinner where Lieutenant Hunter's smile had revealed our predatory nature, to a battle where that same nature had saved hundreds of lives. We hadn't hidden what we were. We'd embraced it, channeled it, used it to protect rather than threaten. And in doing so, we'd found our place in the galactic community not despite our evolutionary history, but because of it. 1 month later, I stood before the full Concordat Council in their grand chamber on the capital world of Harmonium. The formal ratification of the Joint Defense Initiative was moments away, transforming a hasty emergency response into a permanent alliance. In the gallery surrounding the council floor, representatives from every Concordat species watched with interest. Among them sat Captain Reyes and Lieutenant Hunter, both wearing their dress uniforms adorned with new insignia, the combined symbols of Earth and the Concordat, marking them as the first officers of the Joint Defense Force. Elder Voss rose from his seat at the center of the semicircular arrangement, his translucent skin pulsing with the steady rhythm that indicated formal pronouncement. Ambassador Walsh, he intoned. The Concordat has reviewed the events at Outpost Sentinel and the actions of the human vessel Defender. We have also studied the subsequent encounters with these scourge entities along our borders, all successfully repelled by joint human Concordat operations. I stood at attention, acutely aware of the historical significance of this moment. Based on these events, and on the recommendation of the Security Council, Elder Voss continued, the Concordat formally recognizes humanity as a full member species, with all rights, privileges, and responsibilities thereof. A murmur ran through the gallery. This was more than we had expected. Full membership typically took decades to achieve, with species progressing through various levels of associate status first. Furthermore, Elder Voss added, we acknowledge the unique qualities that humanity brings to our collective. While many of our species have evolved beyond our predatory instincts, humans remind us that there is value in remembering what we once were. Not to return to it, but to channel those instincts toward protection rather than aggression. His multiple hearts pulsed in a complex rhythm that my translator rendered as profound respect. In recognition of humanity's demonstrated commitment to defend all Concordat species, we hereby establish the Joint Defense Force as a permanent institution, under combined leadership of human and Concordat representatives. The formal language concluded, Elder Voss did something unprecedented. He stepped down from his elevated position and approached me directly, extending all 6 hands in the Trill gesture of equals. The Concordat acknowledges humanity as it truly is, he said, his voice carrying throughout the chamber. Not as we wished you to be, but as you have proven yourselves to be. Fierce when threatened, protective of those in your care, and honest about both your strengths and weaknesses. I accepted his gesture, clasping his hands in the human manner. Earth accepts this recognition and commits to the defense of all Concordat species as if they were our own. As applause erupted throughout the chamber, each species expressing approval in their unique way, I caught Lieutenant Hunter's eye in the gallery. She offered me that smile again, the one that had started everything. But this time it didn't seem like a battlefield smile at all. It looked like pride. Later, at the formal reception celebrating the new alliance, I found myself momentarily alone, watching the extraordinary sight of humans and aliens mingling with genuine warmth rather than diplomatic politeness. "Quite a change from that first dinner, isn't it?" Lieutenant Hunter commented, appearing at my side with 2 glasses of something blue and effervescent. She handed one to me. "From dinner conversation to interstellar alliance in 2 months," I agreed, accepting the drink. "Not bad for a species still finding its place among the stars." "I think we found it," she said, nodding toward where Captain Reyes was deep in conversation with Loon and several other Mithrai, discussing what appeared to be combat tactics based on their animated gestures. "Yes," I agreed, though not the way I expected during my years of careful diplomacy. Hunter regarded me thoughtfully. "You know, I've been meaning to ask, what made you change your approach that day in the council chamber? After years of presenting humanity as harmless, why suddenly reveal our true nature?" I considered the question, sipping the alien beverage. "Something you said, actually, about making impossible choices and carrying the weight afterward." "I said that?" "When Zartok asked what it felt like to kill," I reminded her. "You said it feels terrible, but sometimes the alternative feels worse." She nodded slowly, recognition dawning. "And you decided honesty might feel terrible in the moment, but continuing the charade would feel worse in the long run." "Exactly," I confirmed. 5 years of hiding what we are, always walking on eggshells, always apologizing for our nature rather than showing how we've channeled it. It was exhausting, and ultimately counterproductive. "Well," Hunter raised her glass. "Here's to honesty then. Terrible and wonderful in equal measure." "To honesty," I agreed, touching my glass to hers. "And to predators who chose to become protectors." As we drank, Zartok approached, his exoskeleton gleaming in the soft light of the reception hall. "Ambassador Walsh, Lieutenant Hunter," he clicked in greeting. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all," I assured him. "We were just reflecting on the journey that brought us here." "A journey that began with a question," Zartok noted, his mandibles moving in what I now recognized as amusement. "I must confess I did not anticipate where that simple dinner conversation would lead." "You knew exactly what you were doing," Hunter said, eyeing him shrewdly, testing our reaction, seeing how we'd respond to provocation. "Perhaps," Zartok acknowledged, mandibles clicking softly. "The Arthan have long believed that character is revealed in unguarded moments, not prepared speeches." "And what did my response reveal?" Hunter asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. "That humans understand the weight of violence," Zartok replied. "You did not boast of kills or dismiss them as insignificant. You acknowledged the terrible burden while also accepting its necessity in certain circumstances." It was illuminating. Hunter seemed momentarily at a loss for words, an unusual state for her. "Thank you, I think." "It was indeed a compliment," Zartok assured her. "The Arthan may have evolved beyond our predatory phase, but we remember what it was to hunt. There is honor in acknowledging one's nature while choosing how to express it." As he moved away to join another conversation, Hunter shook her head slightly. "I still can't believe that my admission to killing started all this." "Not the admission," I corrected. "The smile. That's what caught everyone's attention, the smile that came before the words. It said more than any diplomatic speech ever could." "I wasn't aware I was smiling," she admitted. "That's what made it authentic," I pointed out. "An unguarded moment, as Zartak would say." We stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching the unprecedented mingling of species around us. Humans chatting with Trill, Arthan engaged in animated discussion with Folari, Mithrai explaining some aspect of their hunting rituals to fascinated human military officers. "Do you think it will last?" Hunter asked suddenly. "This alliance, this acceptance of what we are?" I considered the question seriously. "I think it will evolve as all relationships do. There will be misunderstandings, conflicts of interest, cultural frictions. But the foundation is strong because it's built on truth rather than pretense." "Truth can be uncomfortable," she noted. "So is a good battle stance," I countered. "But it keeps you alive when the fighting starts." She laughed, a genuine, unguarded sound that turned heads throughout the reception hall. "Ambassador Walsh, I believe you are becoming more warrior than diplomat." "And you, Lieutenant Hunter, are becoming quite the philosopher," I replied with a smile of my own. "Perhaps we're all evolving beyond our original roles." As the reception continued around us, I caught sight of Elder Voss observing our interaction from across the room, his ancient eyes thoughtful. He raised one of his hands in acknowledgement when he noticed my gaze, and I returned the gesture. In that moment, I understood something fundamental about humanity's place in the cosmos. We were not meant to hide our nature or apologize for our evolutionary path. We were meant to acknowledge it, channel it, and use it to forge connections even with those who initially feared what we represented. The room that had gone quiet like a battlefield when Hunter smiled now buzzed with the sounds of genuine interspecies community. Not despite humanity's predatory instincts, but because we had finally stopped pretending they didn't exist. In the honesty of that smile, in the willingness to be seen for what we truly were, we had found not rejection but acceptance. Not fear but respect. Not isolation but alliance. He asked the human girl if she'd ever killed. She smiled, and the room went quiet like a battlefield. But on battlefields, the most important connections are forged. The truest alliances are born. And sometimes predators become the most dedicated protectors of all. End.